Hello and welcome to the New York Empire podcast. I'm Dan Hilton. He's Matt Pippin Auletta, and week one is in the books. If you're listening to this or watching this on YouTube, then week two is likely already begun, but the Empire do not play again until Friday, May 9th. So that is this coming Friday. So not today, but a week from now. So you really have a chance to soak in the two results from week one, take in week two with the Empire not playing, and then preview for yourself for week three. And that's exactly, Matt, what we're doing today. And we basically have, a few things on the docket. We also want to jump around the other games in the division because honestly, after Oakland and Vegas, the weekend between Phoenix and the Breeze was not, for all the hags that happened with the Empire, the real, division shaking result might have been in a different place in DC. But let's head to the West Coast first, where the Empire fell in the Thursday night matchup, the first game of the UFA season for anybody, the 22-17 loss to the Oakland Spiders, which you and I were talking about this before we got on the air, that even the turnovers seem a bit disingenuous with the way some of them happen, as well as that final result of 22-17. To me, the end of this game was really more like 20-17, and then it was Oakland just late as the Empire were pushing for things. So the stats look a little bit worse because of the way the Empire were pressing to try to get back into the game and kind of not worrying if, again, losing by, you said this before we hit air, losing by 5 and losing by 1, it's the same L, right? Like there is no point differential that you have to worry about or anything like that, especially when playing against Oakland. But I don't know, do you actually want to start on the Empire side of this stuff or the Oakland part of this? Because I think the Oakland part is more, how do I say this? I think the Oakland questions that are answered are kind of more amorphous when we talk about the West and all that stuff than actually talking about the Empire.
Yeah, it's hard to glean too much into one game from either team, right? But I thought right out the bat, Oakland looked absolutely great. I mean, that was a very solid performance to start their season. They look like they could very easily be the best team in the West. I mean, I hope that's not too much of an overreaction, but they played great defense. They pressured a lot. They were hooking. They were connecting on everything. Gordon had a great game. Vickers Batsdorf was all over the place. I mean, that was a great game to start the season, and it kind of reminded me a little bit of when Atlanta had a great game to start the season. It's like last year when they beat the Empire. It's like if they play like that throughout the whole season, I mean, the sky is the limit for them. So hats off to Oakland. That was a great start to the season.
That was kind of my feeling. Well, no, that was my kind of feeling to add to Oakland's thing, that this game to me felt like we can glean that Oakland is for real from this game. And Mark has said this to Evan Lepler after the game, that this game felt like game one for the Empire, which does not dictate where they will be in July, right? And I think a lot of teams can do that as well, where we can say, hey, the teams that won this in week one, you feel like, all right, they were ready to go and they showed up. And if that's who they are throughout the season, they're in good shape. And then the ones who lost can say, hey, this is week one. We're going to be a totally different team in July. And, I think both those things are true. Like, not to continue to be half glass full for both of those things, but like Leo Gordon with those 5 assists, like Leo Gordon showed you that dude is legit. That dude is real. I mean, we knew he was at Brown. We talked about him at Revolver as well. And I previewed that he could be the player of the game in that one. And it seemed to me that there was not even a youthful exuberance. Yeah, he's a young player, but everything that he was doing was working, right? It was like every layout he had, the disc just found its way into his fingers. Every time he threw crossfield, it was completed. Like every crossfield throw where you play in the UFA, the field is wider. And so a lot of times with players playing their first game, you're like, hey, that crossfield hammer is going to be a bit longer than you think it is. Like there's more space to work with, and there's going to be more time for other bodies to get in there. But Leo Gordon didn't seem to care. He just threw him up, and his team came down with him. And as trite as it sounds, like I cover a lot of soccer too, games are different where we can talk about everything that happens before the ball goes in the net. But sometimes if it's a corner kick or whatever, like I have to wind up talking about set pieces or corner kicks or just the reason the ball's in the net. Why is that? It doesn't matter what else happened. And I feel like with this Oakland, the Empire game, even the Huck stuff, like we could talk about the strategy and how you build power position, whatever. 3 of 10 for New York, 6 of 12 for Oakland. But it just felt like whatever Oakland wanted to do, it was happening. And whatever the Empire were trying to do, it wasn't. And yes, a lot of credit on a lot of different reasons for Oakland. But, it just felt like on the night, things are happening for Oakland at home, and they weren't happening for the Empire. And you and I are going to give more analysis to that. but we could also very succinctly wrap it up as that. Like things just worked for Oakland. They were coming down with every 50-50, and the Empire just weren't.
Yeah, there was a lot of little things that Empire can work on, and I think they'll see results pretty quickly. I guess I can just jump right into some points on that. They have some roster turnover from last year, pretty significant on the O line, and you know, they're still going to be trying to figure it out week to week. Some players might shift from D to O. Some players, like Calvin Brown, will be available eventually. I mean, there's changes that are going to happen. I guess to start, I will say Max Shepard, first game for Empire. I thought he played great. He big
That was
thumbs
my
up.
first point here. Yep.
He had some great throws to space where he just kind of throws people open, and that's what they needed in those situations. I thought Oakland was playing pretty good defense, like downfield and on like undercuts, and in the handler space. So every once in a while, you just need somebody who is just like, okay, I see the defense, I see this. Like you're cutting, you might not think you're open. No, I'm just going to bend this throw perfectly right to space around everybody. Like you're open now. And Max did that a few times. And, I think in the beginning of the game, he was a little hesitant to like, kind of like, not take over, but like, just like, figuring out how he fits into his new team in a real game, not just practice and, or the exhibition. And yeah, I thought he just did well. He opened up some space, made a few really great plays, and excited to see how that continues throughout the season.
Yeah, before you get to your next point, I just want to add to the Max point. I think the what his role can be in the Empire offense in different permutations on the field is in the end zone. You saw that he was commanding the front of the end zone while Yacht commanded the back of it. And I think having that front of the end zone presence is something that the Empire didn't necessarily have, knowing, hey, Max is going to get open in a telephone booth, and we can trust him to do that. And they just didn't have that guy to do that in front of the end zone last year. Then to your point, I thought he had the two best throws of the game, just as far as aesthetics. The backhand to take Yacht beyond the defender,
Yeah.
a beautiful something, and then an absolute dime crossfield flick to the back corner as well. I think those are the hardest skill throws to throw. And you're right, when he finds his way in the timing in this offense, he really is a star. Like that's what he is. And he showed you the few bright spots of what this is going to be. Hopefully, again, progression is not linear, but if it is, like Max Shepard is going to potentially be an all UFA candidate just because of how important he's going to be to this Empire offense.
Yeah. And then I wanted to touch on Ben Yacht a bit. Yacht is an amazing player. There's no doubt about that. One of the things he's done the last few years, besides playing some defense, obviously when the team kind of shifted his roles, and he excelled there too. On offense, Empire stars have been surrounded by so many other stars the last few years that they've kind of been able to like let the game come to them and like pick and choose their spots, like when they really go for something, when you kind of just, the defenses are so keyed in on trying to stop everybody because everybody was so good, and you had to help because if you were just one-on-one on an island against Lithio, Babbitt, Jack, whoever, people were getting beat left and right. So, you had a lot of help, whatever. I felt like Yacht to start that game against Oakland was just kind of like letting the game come to him a little bit, but they don't have the same stars and they don't have the same familiarity with each other. So I think if he had been a little more aggressive earlier, either just trying to unlock the field deep, and I know the wind was a bit of an issue. It was a little windy and a little swirly, whatever. Or just, sometimes be like, I will be the guy to get us the reset right now. Like, I will do this. I think if he had been a little more aggressive, it would have helped. He certainly didn't have a bad game by any means, but I think the team will need to think about like what his role will be in the offense with the different personnel. And, being such a big target, if he just unlocks the defense, goes deep. I mean, maybe you don't always get thrown to, but I feel like if he was a little more aggressive in that department, it would have opened up the field for some of the other players too. Just feel like there's like little things that they'll figure it all out, hopefully, and that'll kind of make everything easier for everybody else.
Yeah, that's the question I was asking myself when I was watching the early progressions when Jacob Cohen was on the O-line. Now, they did shift a little bit where Ever Shapiro replaced him at some point in the second half, and then both shared some points in the second half as well, Shapiro and Cohen. But, Cohen making his official debut for the Empire, and I think is very much on purpose to do what you used to see with Lithio, where you bring him into the handler space just to keep that disc moving, sideline to sideline. And I think they want to keep Ben Yacht farther upfield, just, not even in case of emergency, just so that he can, again, finish plays, like, and to keep that Huck potential, which we didn't really see the Empire choosing to Huck a lot last season. And, the difference is now with Jack as well. Jack isn't going to be going in. He's not going to be going deep in the handler space the way he did last season. So as you mentioned, like the offense is just totally different. And we also saw little stuff too, like the Matt LaBar wrinkle, where I know Matt LaBar can have a better game than he did. He did 3 throwaways and then the 2 blocks and assists. So again, glass half full. Matt LaBar being on your O-line means that you have Matt LaBar, you have Yacht, you have Jack, and with Cohen as well, with his size, he's like 6'4". Like, you now have bodies again to take the disc back, which is something you and I criticized the Empire O-line for not being able to do last season. And believe it or not, I'm going to go through these turnovers here now. And there's one point in particular I'm going to get to here. And just again, if you have to take a nap, take your nap here. This is going to be like 3 or 4 minutes. But I'm going to list you the turnovers that I wrote down as I'm watching that game, which is I have 24 to 25. So I missed one. Yeah, mea culpa, whatever. But I'm going to list them to you. And then I kind of want us to have a discussion about, how are those fixable? Is that a quote unquote skill issue? Or is there something, a bigger picture to be taken from this?
Empire fans, it's that time of year again. The UFA season is here, and New York is offering season ticket packages at watchufa.com/empire. Packages include your general admission pass with merch perks and free unlimited popcorn, a disc, and a family pack so you can bring the whole household. Not to mention all season ticket passes include admission to all our away games as well. Just show your pass at the front gate.
All right, turnover 1 was a dump reset. Turnover 2 was a throw off the sideline. Turnover 3 was an inside break from Jack that he short-armed. 4th turnover was a break throw swing from JR to Jack that got broken up. 5th turnover was Alatti misplaying a reset. 6th turnover was a dump reset. 7th turnover was Marquez, a tough throw up the line he probably forced. 8th turnover, Alatti overthrow from his own end zone. 9th turnover, an errant huck by Jack. 10th turnover was a Shepard huck that was misread by Cohen. 11th turnover, LaBar turns it on a break throw backhand. 12th turnover was Oliver floating a crossfield flick that got D'd. 13th turnover was Saul hammering it off the sideline. Then turnovers 9, 10, 11, 12, and 13. 5 of the turnovers all came on the same point. It was a long point in the third.
Yeah.
And then, well, this is the moment, right? They eventually got broken for 11-11 after a 4+ minute point. And up to that point, the Empire were up by 1 every single time. And then you jump ahead when they were down 16-15 with 7:37 in the 4th. Oakland ended on a 6-2 run, which again, I say this game was basically 16-15, like the smallest of margins. And once Oakland started to break late, I think that's kind of what happened with that game. But in that 9, 10, 11, 12, 13 turnovers, it was let me see what I had here. That's what I had just written. It was the Aaron Huck. It was the Shepard Huck. It was the LaBar turn, the Oliver float, and then Saul hammering it off the sideline. Those were the 5 turnovers in just that 1 point. Jumping ahead, 14th turnover, Faye. Turnover in the end zone with D-line on O. 15th turnover was a Jack crossfield hammer. 16th turnover was Jack's flick to JR on an in-cut that was broken up. 17th turnover was Yacht. Last second attempt in the third was blocked, so that was a late quarter situation. 18th turnover, JR short arms a huck on a break chance. 19th turnover, Alatti first throw after getting D'd the D is tipped. 20th turnover, Shepard huck to Shapiro is defended. 21st turnover, Marquez swing is picked off. 22nd turnover, LaBar gets caught near the sideline and throws into traffic upfield. And then the 23rd turnover, Jack short arms a huck. 24th turnover, Marquez hammer from the sideline. All right. Again, too long didn't read to me on that. The only thing that I think that says, all right, Jack is obviously not going to short arm as many throws as he did. I counted 4 there. JR is not going to short arm or make as many throwing mistakes as he did. I counted 2 JR to Jack turnovers, which again is just on in-cuts. Like, that's not going to happen. The only thing that I'm concerned about, really, and then Shank. Like, I think Shank had one of his worst games quarterbacking the D-line, and I don't think he's going to make again, kind of simple mistakes that Shank made on 2 different resets. So I don't think that's happening either. The one thing that I'm concerned about is there was those 3 hammer turnovers from picking up on the sideline. We talked about this last year. We talked about 2 years ago. Lithio was kind of your get out of jail free 2 years ago. And then Elliott, I said this on the pod a number of times. Elliott Chartok was so good at that flick around the double team on the sideline. He was so good at it, and he got them out of trouble. He made it look easy, and I don't want to take that for granted because I don't know if the Empire have a solution for that at the moment. It might eventually be Cowan, but Saul is taller than you think. Saul's like 6'2", but there was 2 turnovers that way from Saul and then 1 from Jack. And so the Empire, I think, I think one of the things they're definitely going to talk about this week and then next week before Montreal, because Montreal love to throw those double teams as well on the sidelines, is how do we get the disc off the sideline at a 98% completion rate? Like, we cannot falter when a double team hits the sideline.
Yeah, those double teams off the sideline are hard, especially I'm not very tall. And I always felt like we should have practiced it more. Like, just let everybody get double teamed at practice, try and throw out of it. Remember there was one practice we were trying, I was getting double teamed by some big people and it was not going well. Like, it is hard. Yeah, I don't know. Maybe the answer is have Yacht pick some of those up. I know they probably want him downfield or like kind of in the all the way across the field as like the big body you can throw the hammer to or something like that. But if they're struggling or it's not what they're super comfortable with, either they really need to drill it and just keep working on it, or they need to put somebody big on the disc to get it out of there. It is difficult. And when teams are keyed in on it and they're ready to attack those spaces where that disc ends up, it's tough. Yeah, some of the hucks were kind of getting like slowed down by the wind a little bit, or there were miscues, and you can chalk that up partially to it's the first game, it's some new people. Jack can throw deep, obviously, can do it very well, but I don't think Jack and SRB really want to, if you had to ask them exactly like what build your perfect like mindset of how you would play offense on this team, I don't think them being the main like bombing it downfield guys is what they would say to you. I don't think either one would prefer that. They're more like, even also Jack is amazing. He's above average at like every single facet of the game, but just as like straight up handler, having to do all the squirrely work back there, all the resets, everything, very capable, absolutely, but just probably not like the best use of his overall talent if you were building a perfect team around him. But they don't have a perfect team right now. They have a good team, so he's adapting to what the team needs, so he's handling back there. But like, I feel like he's a little better when he's like a few players deep in a stack and he has the whole gigantic field to work with, because what's hard is covering Jack Williams when he can go deep and he can beat you with his legs, or he can beat you in the air, or he can make a bunch of like S cuts or little sharp angles and get open, and he can still give the real true handler like the resets, and then he fills in back there. He can do all of those things, and that's when it's like really, really, really hard to defend Jack Williams. And when he's just back there being a handler, sometimes we saw during the game, I think it was Vickers Batsdorf, but like he was getting smothered on a few of those things, and he was kind of dancing, making his dump cuts. And the field's really big. He's got to push a little further one way or the other to give probably whoever had the disc an easier spot to throw it to him. But like, the pressure by Oakland probably resulted in a lot of those mistakes. So I think it's unfair to just say that they were miscues by Empire. I think Oakland applied a lot of really good pressure throughout the game, but it all seemed like stuff that's very solvable from an Empire standpoint. Make better dump cuts, fill, clear, let other people, fill that space, or, it's just tough. Everybody's kind of adjusting to slightly different roles, and they're going to need somebody who is willing to huck it and, wants to huck it. There's a difference between willing and like loves it. Like, we had a few guys throughout the years that loved it. Like, that was their thing. They loved hucking it. So you live with and die with that. And like, I don't think that's exactly what Jack and Rushmeyer Bailey want to do. So they're going to have to figure that out.
Yeah, a few things from what you said. I think the biggest question going into even the Montreal game is, where does Calvin Brown go now? Because I think the Empire would have loved to just put him on D-line and have him be another thrower on the D-line. But I think Marquez has been so good. Yes, he had a few turnovers, but we saw against Vegas. Like, Marquez has been so good on that D-line. And then Sam Jonas is an underrated handler in the league as well, quarterbacking those D-lines. And then along with Shank, like, I think the Empire D-lines have to kind of trust who's there. And then Calvin Brown, it might be a necessity to have him be on O-line to. We know that when you say like funky throws, Calvin probably has the funkiest throws on the Empire in terms of guys that just, he got that off in a tight spot and that was a 60-yard huck. Here it comes, right? I think Calvin has that ability where kind of if you blink, he throws what's unexpected. And I think the league is just so good now. Like defenses are just so good. If you're going to do what Jack and Saul do, which is, do what Jack does, if that makes sense, right? Like watching tape on Saul and Jack, we now have a big enough sample size where I think to your point, like the opposition say, all right, this is what they want to do. Can we just take away what they want to do? And then very much like Leo Gordon, like, yes, this is his first game, so there wasn't much tape on him at this level. But Leo Gordon, like he had those, two lefty like breakthrows or whatever. Like he's just a funky player. Like those guys are hard to game plan against because their question marks as to what they're going to do. And I think the Empire were kind of, defensively at least smacked a little bit by Leo Gordon. That's a funky dude who just does funky stuff with the disc.
There was a Ottawa player, I believe Derek Alexander, who wasn't particularly tall, like maybe around my height, I feel like. And he used to give us so much trouble because he was just like the funkiest thrower and like nothing he did made sense. It was just like he kind of threw whatever he wanted, wherever he wanted, but not in a conventional way. Like it got to the point where after we had played them a bunch of times, I think it was Matt Lamar was marking him one game, and all he was kind of doing to Mark was like almost to break it down, like almost like jumping jacks in front of him, because like you never knew where the release point was, you never knew what he was thinking or where he was about to throw, so like you kind of couldn't mark him like a normal person. You just had to like literally jumping jack-esque, like jumping and flapping and like just like throwing limbs around to just kind of make him second guess whatever was going on up there and like what he was looking to throw. So yeah, the funky throwers are hard to game plan for because you never know really what's coming from where, and it can really unlock the field.
And the worry was that Oakland was going to have to adjust to having Adam Reese and Leo Gordon adding him to this thing, but they had Mac Hecht last season, who was also one of the funkiest throwers that we've had recently. And so I think this Oakland team and that offense was kind of already ready to prepare to play that way. And speaking of Oakland, the Empire will likely also get Gavin May back at some time this year. So there's another big body. Is that defensively? Is that offensively? And the Spiders, meanwhile, they're going to get Dexter Clyburn, former Devil Kid, under Anthony Nunez. They're going to, and he goes to California, Callahan nominee, whatever. Like he's going to be another big body and another big good player for Oakland. So Oakland, yeah, it could be a lot of fun. I don't have any other notes from that game. Again, I think we can kind of not say the Empire. I think they can actually be happy about some of the things they saw. And they're a team, I think, that if the Empire just look at that tape and say, hey, we had some positive signs. And actually, no, let me end with two more positive signs here. We talked about Jacob Cowan making his Empire debut. So did Benjamin Simmons. He had the 3 blocks, and that kid is legit. And that kid is legit, like D1, as in D1 as in like defense, D-line 1, or if you want to call it that. Like we were talking about the Dross, like replacing Ryan Dross, like who just continued to be a block seeker. Maybe just because they're exist teammates, but Benjamin Simmons, the way he was going about his business defensively, it was the most like-for-like replacement that I've seen from Ryan Drost in an Empire uniform, even when Ryan was on the team. You know what I mean? So Simmons, really promising stuff. I thought just seeking blocks, but also when it came time to not going for it and not putting your team in trouble. Like he wasn't laying out just to lay out. Like his layouts were perfectly timed, or he would wind up just putting pressure. Or, I mean, there was one transition he kind of stopped. It was like a 2v1 transition, and he wound up getting the angle he needed to make sure that first throw didn't go off. He gave his teammates enough time to catch up, and then he also is a really difficult mark when he puts it on. And then Sam McCrory, the 18-year-old Montclair high schooler, also had 9 points in the game. So again, it's a reminder that it wasn't just the Empire. Yes, we see Yacht. Yes, we see Jack. Like, all right, the Empire need to be championship ready already. It's like, wait a second. Do they have an 18-year-old making his UFA debut in the 20? It's kind of a reminder that, yes, collectively, there are stars that we recognize, and you see the guts of the 3-time champions, of course. But it's also like this Empire team is not fully formed, and they're still adding pieces to it, which I think the next night in Vegas is an entire team of that to remind you that it takes some time to get that. So, there's not much to say about Vegas. It was a 32-13 win for the Empire. I have to look back in the books. That's one of the bigger ones in history. Winning by 19 is one of the big margins. I I don't think it's the biggest margin. I believe they beat Toronto by 21, correct? In one of those, I think it was 26-8 was one of those, which that's only 18. I'm not good at math,
Yeah,
but
I'm
you get
not
the point.
sure. Yeah.
It's got to be close to one of the biggest blowouts in Empire history. Sam Jonas, Oliver Fay, Antoine Davis, all with multiple blocks, multiple scores in the game. Marquez had 6 assists, 2 hockey assists, 20 for 20 in his passing. Yeah, I mean, the Empire just took care of business, and I wasn't concerned that they weren't going to, but I do think honestly they fixed, especially defensively, they fixed a lot of their disc movement issues. Like Vegas was still windy, and they just seemed much more calm. But to me, I think the biggest thing, Matt, is that the difference in pressure on the resets between Oakland and Vegas, I think actually is the difference in this league between teams that are contending for a championship and teams that aren't. Like if you do not put pressure on the resets, you have no shot in this league. And my question for you is, was it always that case? Like, was it always the case that if you didn't have, elite, disc pressure on resets, then you cannot contend? It seems like that is now a prerequisite for contending for a championship.
I think that there has been a change over the last, who knows, maybe like 7 or so years where it has become more and more possession heavy, not always small ball like we see with DC and some other teams, but there's been a shift towards that in general throughout the league and just through high level play. Teams are just valuing the disc more, and I don't know if that's part of seeing more stats in your face, during a game, after a game, where I know when I first started playing Empire, I mean, 2014, I was only available for like half the games. I was coaching, I was playing club. So to me, it was like, this is another fun thing I'm doing. And then like you start to see some of the stats and it was like, I threw it away 4 times. That's not great. Like I had 4 blocks, but my plus minus is like +1. It's like, oh, that kind of stinks. And it's like, before that, you didn't really see that a lot. I guess if teams were tracking it, maybe you would know, but it's just so much easier to see direct, very easy, concrete evidence of like, oh, you messed up and this happened. Not just like, oh, I felt like I played okay today. Like, I don't know. I think maybe that had something to do with it. Maybe teams were just getting better. I guess everybody's just getting better at throwing in general. The level has risen and risen and risen. So you would think there should be fewer turnovers on offense as people adjust to the field and the rules and everything over the years. But I don't know. To answer the question, I don't know. I guess it's possession matters even more so than ever. And handler resets are hard. When I played a lot, I didn't feel like it was hard to get open on dumps, but I also played with some really good players where sometimes I didn't need to be the reset. When it was Harper, I could leave him all by himself back there and he would throw something to me either 70 yards downfield or like across the field. It kind of depends on the personnel you're with. There were other times where other players needed more of a conventional dump, but yeah, I feel like the pressure that the good teams apply on dumps is really what, I guess to answer your question, yes, it matters tremendously, probably more than anything else.
Well, yeah, I mean, some other things I was thinking about for Vegas, and maybe over the Vegas point, we can get into a more of a bigger, broader conversation about the sport, I guess, real quickly here. But Joel Clutton had a +7. Ryan Heiser had a +4 for a Florida product. So 2 guys you kind of expected to do well. They had to take huge roles. And if the Vegas Bighorns are going to get a win this season, I mean, again, now I think you're circling that Oregon steal after watching what they did against Colorado. Oregon, Vegas, that should be an interesting one where you want to make sure that, and I know one of those teams is going to say this might be our win this season. And as I said, it was night and day in terms of pressure on the resets. But another thing I was thinking about as I was watching Vegas, which doesn't historically have a big ultimate, it's not a hotbed of ultimate. Like there's not a big community where you say, oh, that player came out of Vegas, that player came out of Vegas, going down the line. And as I was watching it, I was thinking that, one, I don't think these top players have ever played, I have a triple negative there. Let me say it a different way. These top players are playing more Frisbee together than I think we've ever seen it before. Like between like Team USA, like between again, like high level club, like again, like a Sam McCrory, I don't know where he'll play his club or whatever it is, but like when you wind up being a young player and you enter this brotherhood, if you want to call it that, like you wind up making these top level teams. And from the UFA, sometimes that's how you get pulled into a top level club team. And now you're the young player, and there's only so many spots for these young players. Like, I think I mean, this is just my perception of the different levels. Like, it is harder and harder, I think, to be just a kind of a random player who shows up and you're like, I didn't know anything about that guy. And then he kind of just shows up and he's got all these throws. Like, I think Sam Jonas, honestly, is like one of the rare examples. Like, one of those guys, like, oh, it looks like you've unearthed this gem that nobody knew about. Because generally, I mean, actually, Cohen might be another example, like a Grinnell College guy, D3. We didn't really know that much about him, right? This 6'4" big body. But I think it's harder and harder to find those kids. Like, I feel like you kind of know about everybody coming in. Like, we talked about it last week that kids are playing, 4 or 5 years, and all of a sudden they're 19 years old, but they've already got 5 years under their belt, and they've done YCCs, and they've traveled for things, and they've high level experience. So I think it's harder and harder to get in that upper echelon. Like, I did I don't want to, I don't want to blow anybody's spot up here, but I did a combine with some of the bigger open teams, not Pony, but some of the bigger open teams in New York City over the weekend. And shout out to one of them that cut me when I explicitly said on the interest form I wasn't trying out for them, but they still sent me. Anyway, so shout out to that team. You know who you are. But yeah, but even that combine, like, I noticed that half the players were kind of already on the teams, there's a lot of former Empire faces there, right? But they already know kind of where they are and where they sit in the hierarchy. And then there wasn't really many other players. Like, there was, and largely a lot of the newer faces, you want to call them that, were college kids, right? Like, I think there was one new player, if you want to call them that. I've been around, but it's like there were not players like me who are like, I'm not saying how old I am, but like post 26 even, like post 25, who were just kind of new on the scene. It was like, you're already on the team or you're a college kid. And that is kind of what the two different places are. And I think, again, we're not talking about like the, Nationals caliber, even though, Blueprint has been there, but like, we're not talking national caliber. We're talking even that second level where it's kind of like, hey, this is an established team, and we're going to take one or two of these new college kids, and they're going to have to become part of this thing. And that is going to be like, going to build this community that way. And I think when you're talking about the elite teams now, when you're talking about the Breeze, you can't talk about the Breeze without talking about Truck Stop. You can't talk about the Empire without pretty much just talking about Pony and Exist. Like, where else? Like, who else are you talking about, right? When you're talking about the Empire, and then some random, again, Matt Labarde is like hard to say, whatever. And I know we're doing an amorphous like club/UFA conversation here, but my hot take is that it is harder than ever before to like break into the elite because the level is just so high. And to your point, everybody's gotten so much better at throwing that, the first day of tryouts, through 2 drills, you're like, that guy can throw and has the athletic tools to make it. That guy doesn't. Or these guys don't. And I feel it's gotten easier and easier to kind of almost figure those things out. You can like almost not write somebody off, but like, if they've got the sauce when you watch a kid for 10 minutes and that's it. Like, I just feel like the level is that high that you either got it or you don't, That's why they told me not to come back to the second open tryout. You can't cut people for when there are other open tryouts. Okay. This is another conversation, but
yeah, you're spiraling.
Let me cut myself, man. I'll let myself know. I promise.
Back to Vegas. I'll reel us in. You sometimes you got to reel me in. I'll reel you in here. I thought that their approach to the game was great. Defensively, some things needed work, whatever. But I felt like they were there to have fun. They knew they probably weren't going to win, but I thought they approached the game with a great energy. I thought Bode gave a perfectly Bode halftime interview about not liking somebody as an observer, then not expecting greatness as a ref. Just like that. Felt like it was perfect. I haven't seen Bode in a while, but that was like, it was great. I wish him success. Yeah, Vegas had some players that, their offense looked okay at times. They really didn't look that bad. You mentioned it, it feels like 8 minutes ago now, but yeah, maybe they could beat the Oregon Steel. Like, that wouldn't shock me at all. I don't think we can just write them off as a team that isn't going to win any games just because they had a tough outing on a windy night against the Empire. The Empire, even though they lost to Oakland, are still a very, very good team. I mean, you can't take anything away from them just because they lost a tight game against a team that has championship weekend aspirations. So, yeah, I thought it was a great start for Vegas. It was cool to see the owner player get a goal in there, and camera cuts to him on the sideline, and everybody's pretty excited. Like that.
Yeah, James Shorey.
Yeah, James Shorey. So yeah, I think all things considered, nobody wants to lose by that much, but I thought their attitude throughout the whole game was great. And I think, they are only going to grow from there. Just like the Empire, they're going to figure things out. They're going to work on it. And yeah, it's not really an ultimate hotbed. It'll be interesting to see if they can pull in some other players to go there or play a few games, or, who knows? I'm not an expert on flight costs, but I imagine flying to Vegas in and out is probably cheaper than a lot of other places because they want everyone to go there and spend all their money. Um,
It
that
is.
would be that would be
Yeah,
my
no,
my guess
I
on
love the
that. Yeah.
exactly reading it.
So,
Yeah.
maybe they can get a few players that, play a few games for them at home, or because like you said, there's not really ultimate youth scenes growing there like you got in a lot of other places where, yeah, the 19-year-olds now come in and they are phenomenal. So it's a little bit of a different situation, but we'll see what they can make the best of it out there.
Yeah, way to truncate my 8-minute point in one sentence there. That young players are good.
Yeah.
Thank you
Young
for that.
players are good. That's accurate.
Yeah. Thank you for that. Okay, so not a few more, but just a few more things to wrap up this show. Around the rest of the East Division, again, I think the most shocking was Phoenix finally getting over the hump against the Breeze in a late game situation. They won 16-15, but truly they had earned like a 16-13 win. The Breeze made that push like we knew they were going too late. But yeah, the Breeze just struggled with that small ball. And I think the difference is that Scott Heyman is a superstar. Like Sean Mott did Sean Mott things and was good. And I think the depth of Phoenix, we saw it in the preseason. Like, yeah, they looked young, but they also looked a lot more experienced and a lot older. And then the names and faces that if Philly's going to beat DC, the names and faces that had to pop up did. Like there was an Eric Whitmer moment. There was a Campanella moment. There was, again, multiple Sean Mott moments. And even Nate Long, like Nate Long is just an experienced player, and he was cool and calm and collected. And, I'm not going to do another 8-minute thing, I promise. But the inverse of that is sometimes, again, Nate Long is not a household name in Ultimate, but if you just complete 98% of your throws, like if you just have breakthrows and you're a handler, like Saul, again, isn't a household name either, but if you complete 95 to 98% of your throws and you break the mark, you swing the disc sideline to sideline, and you kind of let the Scott Heyman, the Sean Motts, you let those game breakers break the game open, then, you've done what you need to do. And I think sometimes in the past, Phoenix wasn't willing to just, okay, we've got to get, somebody who just doesn't do big things, just calm, cool, collected, whatever. And Nate Long was exactly what the doctor ordered for that game. And it was awesome to see for Philly. And I think the other big takeaway I have is that even if they can't replicate this, like they might be able to, because Scott Heyman is the real deal. Like that guy, he doesn't look like he's faster than everyone on the field, but he might be faster than everyone on the field. He just creates separation so easily. And the other thing too, we'll reiterate, if you're an O-line and you have to get the disc back, like that game was really windy, and DC will certainly calm things down and look much different. But Philly, if they were going to get one off DC, because I think you and I on paper say there is a talent disparity there. But if they were going to get that win off DC, it was going to be winning conditions that they were going to take advantage of. Hey, if we're Phoenix and we win those 50-50s against DC and we punch it in, then, we can go up. Where they were up by 4 at one point in that game, or 5 at one point in that game.
4 or 5, somewhere around there. Yeah.
So we build that lead, and we punch when we need to. Because if this game is replayed again with 0 wind, I mean, obviously you're going to continue to back DC in that circumstance, but that wasn't what happened. There was too much wind, not even too much wind for DC, but Philly they were more clinical. Like it only took them 3 throws to get into the end zone as opposed to 9. And that's a credit to also the Philly defense and the way that, Brando got them ready to play. And they were ready to play. They're ready to work hard. They're ready to put a lot of pressure on those, the Breeze resets. And I think the Breeze, too, we're incorporating a few fresh new faces that, it's one thing to be the Breeze. The Breeze is a team. Lauren Boyle as a coach, like they're ready for that moment. The Breeze they were at championship weekend with largely the same team. They're ready. But to your point, like there's little pieces you add here and there. And maybe that player is, making the UFA debut and isn't necessarily ready for that big moment there, and Philly just was. Their young players weren't afraid and they're ready to go.
Yeah. No Johnny Mox is a big change for them too. I mean, Johnny was a very good player for them for a bit. So it's a lot of those players are still very familiar with each other, but add a little bit of wind and a scrappy Philly team. And I mean, yeah, it was a tight game. It, Philly also always goes into every season or continues to have just this level of, I'll say, slightly irrational confidence. They always think they're basically the best team in the division, kind of. And you got to admire that that's how they kind of approach things and how they put themselves out there. It doesn't always pan out, but you can kind of see it when it is clicking on certain nights, and they're giving the likely the top three teams, or at least on paper, teams that are top half of the division. They're giving them a run for their money, even when they lose. I mean, they played a lot of close games last year against all these teams. They just,
But the Empire overtime,
they just didn't win, the last point or two often, and that was it. But, you can't discredit them. I mean, I would not be shocked if they made the playoffs. You can't just write them off. So the result is, I guess, a little surprising. It was a long time coming, but I guess if you had also said a while back, will they lose, every game against the Breeze for 8 years? That might not have been 8 years, but for however long, like, I would have said, no, that's crazy. They'll get a win somewhere, sometime along the way. Like, yeah, it was, not quite the same vibes because the stakes weren't always as high, but Empire kept losing to Toronto over and over and over and over, and we thought we were going to beat them many, many times, and we were ahead many, many times, and we somehow blew it many, many times. So,
Yeah, I mean, we did talk about the stakes though, because Phoenix, now they've got Toronto twice, and if they find a way to open the season 3-0,
yeah,
the last 2 seasons now they've started 0 for 5. They put themselves in a hole, played better, and couldn't get out of it. So if they could do the inverse this season, start with a win over the Breeze, and then find a way to beat Toronto twice, now, yeah, it's them. Like, they're in the hunt, and they're the ones who are, instead of saying, okay, well, Toronto or Phoenix, can one of those push the Glory, the Breeze, and the Empire? Now it's more like, hey, the Phoenix are in a position of power. Can they hold on?
yeah, and it's a short season too. So, I mean, every game matters. I mean, to that end, going back to Empire Oakland, like, sure, the Empire are going to get better from that game. I'd be shocked if that was the best they played all season. But, that game mattered. It could end up mattering a good deal for playoff placement or, just how things all shake out. And, there were 1 or 2 coaching decisions that maybe could have been a little tighter, like really trying to like win that game instead of just kind of like letting it breathe and hoping you're going to win in the end. But yeah, it's hard to coach as if everything's on the line in game 1 of the season when you're not even playing that poorly. So I get it.
Yeah, I mean,
but it's a short season.
And this is not. Yeah, we're not taking anything away from Matt Cat Stevens.
No.
Like, he was without Anthony Nunez for that one. Then Anthony Nunez comes back for Vegas, and yeah, I mean, no offense to the Nunez family trips, but if they could have somehow inversed that a little bit, but if it would have been Vegas first and Oakland, we might be talking about something different, because again, like, Cat made a lot of, I think, good decisions. Like I said, in the way he was shuffling around Shapiro and Cohen, like, he was trying to give Oakland different looks as well and trying to problem solve on the fly. And I think Cat did a good job of that. But I think, yeah, there was like that extra bit of coaching voice that experience of Anthony Nunez certainly, I think, could have helped, not only on the margins, but some of the main ideas throughout that game. And, you might have been talking about something different. And then, okay, so to wrap this up, the last 2 things I have to note is that if you get the chance to, I know it's over the week, but Hustle versus Shred, it was jarring to me to be watching as many of the games around the opening week that I did, and then watch that game, because that game was like, those 2 would have beaten everyone else in the league this weekend, because Hustle and Shred were both ready to play. I mean, Colorado had a good argument, and it's not to disparage Oregon, but there was like a lot. Well, that was put this way. There was a lot of run-on hucks. Like, there was a lot of times when it was like a track meet where the Colorado Summit player was kind of just running onto a huck that was thrown open, which tells you where was the pressure on the marks, where was the help, where was that deep help. So there's a lot of things there with the Colorado. But like, Hustle and Shred, if they did not play at a championship level, they were going to lose that game. And the Shred still, I think, played at a championship level and still lost that game to Atlanta. So I was so impressed by those 2 teams, and we knew that they'd be good. But to me, it was enjoyable to be in April and watch a level that high. So again, to go back to try to make my 8-minute rant relevant to any conversation, like, again, these elite players have been playing together all winter long. And, even the club season didn't end that long ago in October. So like, they're still the same units. And for both those teams to add a few of the new faces, yes, but these teams have now been practicing in the UFA for 2-3 months now. And those looked like whatever they focused on for the last 3 months was exactly what they needed to be the best version of themselves. And then the last thing to note is Glory Royale. Glory beat Royale 26-18. Toba de Crana against his former team, the Belgian import to Boston from Montreal. He looked, what we saw in the Rookie of the Year last season. Now, the big note is Ryan Dinger on the O-line for the Glory. Basically the same thing I just said about Nate Long. Give those compliments to Ryan Dinger. That's kind of what his role is going to be for Boston, just to calm everything down and let Sadokes and the Babbitts and all the, DeCrana and Stoughton, let those guys who are the big stars and headline makers make the headlines. And then Bert Jan was really good on the D-line, had 13 points played, but 3 goals. And so, yeah, Boston, not say that they didn't entirely look the part, but that game was also closer than it looked as well. Like, there was a lot of wind. It was that nasty Northeast or East Division wind. So it was really close. And then there were just those moments when it wasn't. And the second and third quarter was where the Glory just kind of built that lead. But I thought in the first and the fourth, the Royale were there with them. And I think if I was going to just make this preview about the Montreal Royale, that would be what the Empire have to make sure they do. They have to understand that, like, especially with Tremblay Joka playing on their O-line for Montreal, same thing with Kenton Bonneau and Quinlan, like Le Bourdet, like the names that we know from Montreal, like, yeah, DeCrana is missing, but like that's really the only name. They brought back Jacob Brissett, who is the most fun ambidextrous thrower in the entire league. And that O-line for Montreal, it looks real. And that Montreal O-line can punch with you for like 30 minutes. And if you don't win that other 10 minutes, nope, not right math. Math was not correct. Well, whatever it is, like if you don't win that other 25% of that game when Montreal is not going toe for toe with you, when Montreal kind of, when they just can't be up to snuff, you've got to win those minutes. Like you cannot play poorly in the time that Montreal gives you that opening. I think because this Montreal team showed you even against its Glory, you've got to hit it's kind of like playing Mario Kart and you hit you drift behind somebody. If you don't hit your drift when it's time to, then Montreal's going to hang in with you that entire game, and it's going to be tighter than you want it to be.
Well, and that is kind of what happened in the game against Oakland. The Empire D-line got the disc a lot. They just, you ran through that list of turnovers. A lot of them were on the defense where they had these long points where they had some chances and they kind of squandered a few. So if they could have just cleaned up 1 or 2 of those, that game's probably tied late in the fourth, and then Empire aren't trying to scramble to get a goal or 2 with time running down, and then the turnovers compiled, and then the break chances for Oakland just they piled on top with the 5 goals at the end. But really, if the D-line just had put some of those away instead of giving it right back, maybe a different outcome. So to your point, if you just let Montreal hang around, they're a gritty team. They're not just gonna go away on their own. Like you got to put them away when you have the chance early. This way you have a little bit of breathing room, and things don't just kind of accidentally whoopsie in the fourth quarter, and then you realize like, oh, we might lose. So yeah, when they give you the opportunities, you got to put it away.
Yep, and I think that's going to be the name of the game. And if you want to watch the Empire try to put it away against Montreal, that is going to be May the 9th. So 1 week from today when we're recording this, 7 p.m. at Joseph F. Facina Field. Again, it's Royale against Empire, as the Empire have their first divisional opponent of the season in the Montreal Royale. So the season is already fun. Again, if you did not see an 8-minute rant from me here, it's because I cut it down. I think as you've learned here, we both, Matt, you and I use this space to process our feelings as much as we do process Empire results.
Speaking of feelings, I have something important. You can't cut this, okay? During the broadcast, Evan and Charlie are talking, and they're talking about the experimental game and the experimental rules. And Evan mentioned that he liked the timeout and you can pull from half field and trap the other team. Evan, I don't know if you listen to this, just whatever. Somebody, please tell him it's a horrible, horrible idea. Please, I hate it. I hate it so much. It's awful. The MLU is dead, and its rule should die with it forever. Okay? Horrible rule.
As if anybody...
Horrible rule. I could go for 8 minutes, Dan. You're going to have to cut me off. I hate it. I hate it so much. It's so stupid.
If anybody from the league is watching...
I hate that rule.
if anybody from the league is watching, or if Evan is watching, if you did not get a chance to watch our preview, you don't have to. Again, it's already, most of it's obsolete, but at least go scrub on YouTube. Just scrub when his mustache gets extra swirly. That is when he's yelling about that. So yes, just that 5 minutes. Send it to
I
Evan.
think I get closer to the camera
Evan,
too. I can't help it. Yeah, I hate it. I hate it so much. Yeah.
You could see on the video when he does it, and he made some compelling arguments. We're going to try to keep making compelling arguments all season long on the Empire podcast. Again, we'll see you. Get your tickets early on shopempireultimate.com for that game on May the 9th at 7 p.m. There's plenty of home games as well if you can't make that one. But for Pippin and myself, as always, have a good weekend. Enjoy your Ultimate, and we'll see you at Joseph F. Cena Field.